The judge said, "All assets to your ex-wife." I smiled because she had no idea what was coming next. Judge Martinez looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Hoffman, do you understand the court's preliminary assessment? Based on the evidence presented, you're looking at awarding approximately 75% of marital assets to your wife." Sarah's lawyer, Richard Stern, was practically glowing. Sarah sat beside him with perfect tears streaming down her face. The victim, the betrayed wife, the woman who just wanted what was fair. I smiled, actually smiled. "Your Honor," my attorney, Patricia Moore, said, standing, "we'd like to present our evidence now." That's when Sarah's face changed, just for a second, a flicker of confusion. She had no idea what was coming next. "But I need to tell you about the day I discovered my wife of 12 years was planning to destroy me, and how she had absolutely no clue I was 10 steps ahead the entire time. I'm Jake Hoffman, 38, and I run a tech consulting firm called Hoffman Solutions. We do cybersecurity consulting for Fortune 500 companies, international contracts, multiple offices, annual revenue around $8 million. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. My wife Sarah, 37, worked part-time at the Denver Museum of Natural History, 3 days a week, mostly administration and event planning. We'd been married 12 years, no kids, we'd agreed to wait, then just never pulled the trigger. We had a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Cherry Creek, 2 cars, stable marriage, or so I thought. Everything changed on a Wednesday in March. I was supposed to be in Seattle for a cybersecurity conference through Friday, but my keynote got canceled. I flew home Wednesday afternoon instead of Friday night, thinking I'd surprise Sarah with an early return. Her Audi was in the driveway at 2:47 p.m. So was a Mercedes S-Class I didn't recognize. Colorado plates, recent model, expensive. I grabbed my suitcase and walked up to our front door. That's when I heard her voice through the living room window. We'd left it cracked for the spring breeze. The windows in our Cherry Creek house had those old-fashioned designs where voices carry. "I can't wait until this is over," Sarah was saying. Her voice was excited, happy, the way she used to sound when we first started dating. "Once the divorce is final, we can stop hiding. The lawyer says I'll get at least 65% of everything, maybe more if we can prove emotional distress. Richard thinks we can push for 75% if we show he was emotionally abusive." My hand froze on the doorknob. The suitcase handle slipped from my grip, but I caught it before it hit the ground. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid they'd hear it. "Jake has no idea," she continued. "He's so trusting, so clueless about anything that isn't work. God, it's almost too easy. I've been recording our conversations for months, and the man has never once said anything I could use. He's too fucking nice, so we're going to have to get creative with the evidence." A male voice responded, deep, smooth. The voice I'd heard on the phone when Sarah's boss called about museum events. "You're brilliant. You know that? Most people couldn't pull this off." "I know," she laughed. That laugh I used to love, that used to make me smile. Now it sounded like glass breaking. "Daniel, you're going to love living in this house. The master bedroom has that mountain view you loved, and the neighborhood, it's perfect for when we get married. Your kids can go to the good schools. What about Jake? Won't he fight this?" "Jake?" She laughed again. "No, he'll just accept it and move on. He's passive. He's always been passive. That's why I married him. He was safe, stable, predictable, but God, I was so bored. You know how many times I've faked being happy for the last 3 years? My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my lungs. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of trust, of building a life together, of believing we were happy, all lies." "When do you tell him?" Daniel asked. "September. Richard says to wait until after the summer. Gives us more time to document his emotional unavailability and cold behavior. The longer the paper trail, the stronger our case. I've been keeping a journal of every time he works late, every time he's too tired for date night, every time he chooses work over me. The judge will eat it up. Poor neglected wife, workaholic husband." I backed away from the door silently. My hands were shaking. I dropped my keys twice trying to get back to my car. I drove to the Starbucks on First Avenue and sat there for 4 hours, staring at my cold venti coffee. Sarah had a plan, a lawyer, an affair partner ready to move into my house, a timeline, fake evidence, a journal full of lies. She had everything, except one thing. She thought I didn't know. That was her mistake. I called Patricia Moore at 7:23 p.m. from a hotel room. Patricia Moore, 52, had a reputation as the most ruthless divorce attorney in Colorado. She'd handled 3 high-profile cases in the last 2 years, all involving attempted fraud by spouses. She won all 3. "Mr. Hoffman," she said when I finally got through, "what can I do for you? My wife is planning to divorce me. She doesn't know I know. She's already hired a lawyer, and she's claiming she'll get 65% of my assets. I need to protect myself." "When did you find out?" 3 hours ago. I overheard her talking to her affair partner. "Did you record it?" No, pity. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go home tonight and act completely normal. You're going to be the perfect husband. And tomorrow, you're going to hire a private investigator. Then we're going to build a case that will destroy whatever she's planning. Is that legal? Everything I do is legal, Mr. Hoffman. That's why I'm expensive. The private investigator was Marcus Webb, 43, former Denver PD detective with 18 years of experience. He specialized in domestic cases, cheating spouses, hidden assets, fraud. She's been planning this for at least 8 months, Marcus told me 2 weeks later. We were sitting in his office in Lodo, looking at surveillance photos. Since Daniel started at the museum, I've documented 17 meetings between them at his apartment. I've got hotel receipts, credit card statements showing she's been using cash advances to pay her attorney, Richard Stern, by the way, known for aggressive tactics. What else? Marcus slid another folder across the desk. This is the interesting part. She's been recording you. I found a voice-activated recorder in your home office. Another one in the bedroom. She's been collecting audio for months. Why? Building evidence. Trying to catch you saying something she can use. The problem is, Marcus smiled grimly, you're apparently a really good husband. You never yell, never threaten, never say anything remotely actionable. So she's been editing the recordings. Editing. Taking your words out of context. Splicing together different sentences. Making fake evidence. I've got the original files from her cloud backup. She's not very good at operational security. And I've got the edited versions she's been sending to her lawyer. My stomach dropped. That's fraud. Yup, and we can prove it. The next 6 months were hell. I had to act normal. Be the clueless, trusting husband. I bought flowers every Friday, Sarah's favorite white roses from the florist on 3rd Street. Suggested date nights at restaurants she'd been wanting to try, told her I loved her before bed, kissed her goodbye in the morning. Every kind gesture made her more confident that I had no idea what was coming. But here's what I was really doing: restructuring everything. See, when you run an international consulting business, there are completely legal ways to move assets. Over 4 months, with Patricia's guidance and my company's CFO, Kevin Rodriguez, a 42-year-old former corporate attorney who knew tax law inside out, we did the following. April, transferred $2.4 million from personal savings to business operating accounts. Justification, expansion into European markets. We had legitimate contracts pending with 3 companies in Germany and 1 in Switzerland, all requiring upfront operating capital. Completely legal, completely documented. May, moved our investment portfolio worth $800,000 to international markets through corporate investment vehicles. The business purchased stock in emerging tech companies in Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Legitimate corporate investments with potential for high returns. Also, legal. June. Transferred our Cherry Creek house to a holding company I'd established 5 years ago for business properties. The justification: I'd been renting office space in Denver for $8,000 a month. Why not convert a portion of our house to corporate headquarters, take the tax deduction, and reduce rental expenses? Legitimate business decision. The house was now corporate real estate, valued at $1.2 million, held by Hoffman Holdings, LLC. July. Restructured my compensation. Instead of taking a $280,000 annual salary, I reduced it to $120,000 with the rest in stock options, deferred compensation, and business expense accounts. On paper, my personal income looked like $120,000. Everything else was locked in corporate structures. August, created employee benefit trusts and retirement plans for my 12 employees. Funded them with $600,000 from the business. Legitimate employee retention strategy. Also, conveniently, protected from marital asset division under Colorado law. By August, my personal assets on paper looked like about $400,000 in savings and a $120,000 salary. Everything else, $3.8 million in business assets, international investments, corporate real estate, and deferred compensation, was locked in legal structures that Sarah's lawyer couldn't touch. All legal, all documented with legitimate business justifications, all completely invisible to Sarah because she'd never paid attention to the business side of our lives. When I'd tried to explain corporate structure and tax strategies over the years, her eyes would glaze over. "That's your thing, honey," she'd say. "I trust you with the money stuff." That trust was about to cost her everything. Sarah served me divorce papers on September 3rd at 7:15 p.m. Came home from the museum with Daniel waiting in the car. I saw him through the window and handed me the papers with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jake. I just can't do this anymore. You've become so distant, so cold." I'd been working on a cybersecurity contract in my home office. The same home office where she'd planted a recorder to catch me saying something incriminating. "Sarah, What? Why?" "I need space. I need to figure out who I am. My lawyer will be in touch." She left with a suitcase. Went to stay with her sister, she said. She went to Daniel's apartment. Marcus had photos. The divorce complaint asked for 75% of all marital assets, full ownership of the house, alimony of $12,000 per month for 10 years, her grounds, emotional abuse, creating a hostile home environment, and emotional volatility that made her fear for her safety. All lies, all supported by her edited audio recordings. The court date was set for November 17th. Patricia spent weeks preparing. We had Marcus's surveillance. We had the original unedited audio files. We had forensic analysis from Dr. Sarah Chen, audio forensics expert with 22 years of experience, showing exactly how Sarah had manipulated the recordings. "This is slam-dunk evidence of fraud," Patricia told me, "but we need to let her present her case first. Let her commit to the lies in court under oath. Then we destroy her." "What about my assets?" "That's the beautiful part. She's asking for 75% of $3.2 million in marital assets. That's what she thinks you're worth based on your tax returns from 2 years ago. She has no idea you've legally restructured everything. When the court tries to divide assets that no longer exist in the marital estate, there's nothing to divide. Is that legal? It's aggressive, but it's legal. You restructured your business for legitimate business purposes: international expansion, corporate growth, employee retention. The fact that it also protected your assets from an illegitimate divorce claim? That's just smart business. The preliminary hearing was on November 17th at 9 a.m. Judge Maria Martinez presiding. 61 years old, appointed to the bench 17 years ago, known for having zero tolerance for fraud. Sarah looked perfect. Conservative dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back, the terrified wife. Her lawyer, Richard Stern, presented their case methodically. Financial documents showing my income, tax returns, property deeds, a list of marital assets totaling $3.2 million. Then he played the audio. My voice, saying, "I can't do this anymore." Sarah's voice, crying, "Please don't hurt me." My voice, "You need to understand something." Sarah's voice, "I'm afraid of what you'll do." My voice, "This ends now." The courtroom was silent. Judge Martinez was making notes. Sarah was crying softly, except none of those conversations had ever happened. Not like that. "I can't do this anymore," was me talking about being too tired to mow the lawn. "You need to understand something," was from a conversation about refinancing the mortgage. "This ends now" was about canceling our cable subscription, all spliced together, all fake. Judge Martinez looked at me. "Mr. Hoffman, these recordings are very concerning." "Your Honor," Patricia stood, "everything opposing counsel just presented is fabricated, and we can prove it." Patricia Moore didn't just present evidence. She conducted a surgical destruction. First, she introduced Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic audio expert. 56 years old, Ph.D. in audio engineering from MIT, 22 years of experience testifying in federal court cases involving audio evidence. "Dr. Chen, what did your analysis reveal about these recordings?" Dr. Chen adjusted her glasses. "Every single audio file submitted by the plaintiff has been digitally edited. I identified 43 separate edit points across the 7 recordings submitted as evidence. These are not continuous conversations. They are composite fabrications created by extracting phrases from multiple unrelated conversations and reassembling them to create false narratives. Can you explain that for the court?" "Certainly. For example, in Exhibit 3, the plaintiff presents what appears to be a threatening exchange. Mr. Hoffman allegedly says, 'I can't do this anymore,' followed by Mrs. Hoffman crying and saying, 'Please don't hurt me,' followed by Mr. Hoffman saying, 'This ends now.' However, my analysis reveals that these 3 statements come from 3 completely different conversations, recorded on 3 different days, and digitally spliced together. Can you show the court?" Dr. Chen pulled up her laptop, connected it to the courtroom display, showed waveform analysis with timestamps. Here you can see the audio signature shows 3 distinct recording environments: different ambient noise, different microphone proximity, different acoustic properties. This conversation never happened as presented. It was manufactured. She played the original files. My voice saying, "I can't do this anymore," while talking about being too tired to mow the lawn. Sarah's voice saying, "Please don't hurt me," while we were playfully wrestling over the TV remote during a football game. My voice saying, "This ends now," while canceling our cable subscription over the phone with Comcast. All spliced together to make me sound dangerous. All fake. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning humming. Dr. Chen, in your professional opinion, were these recordings manipulated with intent to deceive? Absolutely. This level of editing requires deliberate effort and planning. The editor, in this case, Mrs. Hoffman, based on file metadata, spent significant time creating these false narratives. This was not accidental or coincidental. This was systematic fabrication of evidence. Richard Stern tried to object. Your Honor, my client was merely trying to save it, Judge Martinez said coldly. Dr. Chen, you may step down. Then Patricia played the recordings Marcus had recovered from Sarah's cloud backup. The real conversations. The unedited ones that showed exactly what she was planning. Recording 1, Sarah and Daniel, May 14th, on his apartment balcony. Sarah. The lawyer says we can push for 75% because of emotional distress. We just need to document his behavior, or create documentation if there isn't any. Daniel. What if he finds out? Sarah. He won't. I've been watching him for months. He works on his computer with headphones on half the time. He has no idea I'm recording every conversation. And Jake's too nice to suspect anything. This is going to be like taking candy from a baby. Recording 2. Sarah and her friend Monica. June 22nd at a restaurant. Monica. Are you sure about this? Lying to a judge seems risky. Sarah. It's not lying, it's strategic presentation of facts. Every couple fights. I'm just making sure the judge sees our fights from my perspective. Besides, when Daniel and I get married, we're keeping the Cherry Creek house. Jake can have whatever's left and his precious business. Monica. What if he fights back? Sarah. Jake, please. The man once apologized to a phone scammer for wasting their time. He's passive. He'll just accept it and move on. Recording 3. Sarah and her lawyer Richard Stern, July 8th, in his office. Sarah. So these edited recordings, they'll hold up in court? Richard. If they're challenged, we'll claim you were simply compiling evidence from multiple conversations. Perfectly legal to consolidate related incidents for clarity. Sarah. And the judge will buy that? Richard. Judges see emotional abuse cases all the time. With the right presentation, absolutely. The courtroom erupted. Spectators gasping, the bailiff calling for order. Richard Stern had gone completely white, his own voice on the recording, advising his client on how to present fabricated evidence. Judge Martinez's face was stone. Mrs. Hoffman, please stand. Sarah stood on shaking legs. Her perfect victim act had evaporated. She looked terrified, because she was. Mrs. Hoffman, did you create fabricated evidence to present in this court? Your Honor, I was scared. He was emotionally abusive. I just wanted to protect. Answer the question yes or no. Did you or did you not digitally manipulate audio recordings to create false evidence? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Did you present these fabricated recordings to this court under oath, claiming they were authentic? Yes. Did you conspire with your attorney to present this evidence as legitimate? Sarah looked at Richard Stern. He was frantically shaking his head. Yes. Judge Martinez closed her file. Mr. Stern, you'll be hearing from the Colorado Bar Association. Mrs. Hoffman, you've committed fraud upon this court, perjury, and evidence tampering. I'm referring this case to the district attorney immediately. Then she turned to Patricia. Counsel, you mentioned asset division issues? This was the moment Sarah's whole world collapsed. Then Patricia dropped the final bomb. Your Honor, there's one more issue. Mrs. Hoffman is seeking 75% of what she believes are marital assets totaling $3.2 million. However, due to legitimate business restructuring over the past 6 months, these assets are no longer in the marital estate. Explain. Mr. Hoffman runs an international consulting business. Over the past 6 months, he's expanded operations to Europe and Asia. This required restructuring personal assets into business operating capital, corporate holdings, and international investments, all legal, all documented, all for legitimate business purposes. The marital estate, as Mrs. Hoffman understands it, no longer exists in the form she's claiming. Richard Stern jumped up. Your Honor, this is asset hiding. It's corporate restructuring, Patricia said calmly. We have documentation showing every transaction was for legitimate business purposes. International contracts worth $4.7 million, European office leases, employee benefit trusts. Nothing was hidden. It was legally moved for business growth. Judge Martinez looked at the documentation for a full 5 minutes. Let me understand this correctly. Mrs. Hoffman fabricated evidence to seek 75% of assets that were legally restructured before she even filed for divorce? That's correct, Your Honor. Judge Martinez closed the file. Mrs. Hoffman, you've committed fraud upon this court. I'm denying your petition in its entirety. No alimony, no property division. You're responsible for Mr. Hoffman's legal fees. I'm also referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges related to evidence fabrication. She banged the gavel. We're done here. Sarah finally dropped her victim act as we left the courthouse. You planned this whole thing? She screamed in the parking lot. Marcus was filming everything. We'd prepared for this, too. No, Sarah, I said calmly. You planned this whole thing. You spent 8 months planning to destroy me. I just planned better. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You have nothing. No house, no money, no alimony. And your lawyer's going to sue you for fraud because you lied to him too. Daniel dumped her 2 weeks later. I know because Marcus kept surveillance going just to make sure she didn't try anything else. Turns out Daniel wanted the lifestyle, not the broke woman living with her sister. The DA filed charges, 3 counts of evidence tampering, 2 counts of fraud upon the court. Sarah took a plea deal, 2 years probation, community service, and a permanent record that shows she fabricated evidence in divorce proceedings. Richard Stern was sanctioned by the Colorado Bar Association for failing to verify his client's evidence. 6 months later, I sold the Cherry Creek house for $1.2 million, a corporate sale through my holding company, completely legal. Bought a modern condo in Lodo with mountain views. The business restructuring I'd done defensively actually made my company way more profitable. We landed contracts in 3 new countries. I'm dating someone new, Rebecca, a corporate attorney. She knows the whole story. Actually finds it funny that I outmaneuvered someone who thought I was clueless. You weren't passive, she said over dinner last week. You were patient. There's a difference. Last I heard, Sarah moved to Austin and works retail at a boutique. Daniel married someone else, a cardiologist with actual money. Sometimes I think about that moment in the courtroom when Judge Martinez read her decision, when Sarah's face changed from confident to horrified, when she realized she'd been outplayed at her own game. She underestimated the quiet, trusting guy who loved her for 12 years. Turns out I wasn't clueless. I was just planning better. The judge said, "All assets to your ex-wife." Then Patricia Moore stood up, and Sarah learned what happens when you underestimate someone who's 10 steps ahead. She planned to destroy me. I planned to survive. Turns out survival is the best revenge.